everybody. Come on in. Have your coffee. O'Keefe dropped. What did I miss? I saw a video about... oh, that is so nothing. Nobody's going to care about that. We'll talk about that later. It's a nothing burger. You're right. Yes, I'm late, but it's because I was writing a blog post, which you probably need to say. Yeah, let me just deal with that O'Keefe video. The one I saw was some nameless Democrat who was saying things that were a little bit offensive, I suppose, but really he was just making a conceptual point, and it wasn't Hillary Clinton, and it wasn't her inner circle, and he was just talking about voting. And frankly, he was on the side of African Americans. He was actually saying that they're voting against their self-interest, which is sort of being on their side if you think about it. So I think the O'Keefe video, the one that dropped today, is a big nothing. I don't think you should have posted it. Yeah. Polls are looking good. All right, how many of you have read my blog already? Well, good. Some of you have. I just posted one today. I'm looking at my analytics right now as I'm talking to you, and it appears that 900 people are reading the blog right now, at this moment. All right. Let me recap what I blogged. As I've taught you for the past year, fear is the best persuader. So in the early part of this process, Trump had the fear advantage because he was saying in the primaries, running against the other Republicans, that the borders were porous and criminals and rapists were coming in and terrorists were coming in through immigration and ISIS is putting people in cages and that sort of stuff. So Trump had the biggest fear message. He was the strongest voice against that fear, and he won the primaries. At the same time, the biggest fear over on the Democratic side was Trump himself. Their biggest fear was that Trump would win. So although Sanders did better in polls in a head-to-head matchup against Trump, I don't think anybody really thought that he would be able to beat Trump, because nobody had really gone after Sanders. He was sort of a fresh field. People just assumed that Clinton had a better machine, better ground game, more experience, better debater probably. And I think that it just felt safer to get Clinton as the head of your ticket if your biggest fear is Trump. Then it was Clinton versus Trump for the first time, let's say the beginning of the summer. And during that time, Trump still had the better fear persuasion. If you remember, Clinton was all about her experience and her policies. And that's not really fear. It's just boring. Nobody cares about her policies and her facts. So Trump is actually ahead. He was ahead of Clinton in the national polls for a while. And then Clinton got smart and got tough and probably had some help from persuaders who said, go fear, go fear. And so she cranked up the fear. And the fear she went for is that the biggest fear in the world, the thing you should be afraid of, is Trump himself. He's gonna have this bad temperament, and his temper will cause him to push the button and launch a nuclear war, and we're all gonna die. Oh, and by the way, his racist ways are gonna bring back racism in the way that we haven't seen it in generations. So this was a really strong fear package, because the fear that Clinton was selling is something that would affect everybody. The fear that Trump was selling could affect everybody, but more likely a terrorist attack or individual crime affect individuals. you know. And if you didn't think you were going to be killed by an immigrant, and if you didn't think a terrorist was going to get you personally, it wasn't as scary as thinking that the whole world might blow up if you had a President Trump, or that we would all become racist and there'd be a race war because of President Trump. So for a while, that gave Clinton the clear advantage in the fear persuasion. As long as she was telling the world that Trump himself is the biggest thing to fear, Trump's fear that some of us might die was less effective. And sure enough, Clinton pulled ahead in the polls. But lately we've seen some changes. One thing that kicked off this latest parade of scandals and revelations was the Access Hollywood tape. And so for a while, all of our attention went to that. And suddenly we went away from what is scaring us to what is really interesting and appalling, and it offends us, but doesn't really scare us. And it doesn't scare us because we don't expect that Trump is going to come to our house and grab our pussy. It's just not a risk. Whatever he did or did not do to individuals was their risk and their situation, and they're largely strangers. We care about them, but not as much as we care about ourselves. And so while our attention was on Trump the horn dog, your attention was not on Trump the scary guy with the bad temperament who's going to blow up the world. So every minute that you spent thinking about what Trump did or did not do with women, it's time you weren't thinking about how scared you were that he might do something to blow up the world. And so persuasion is about where you put people's attention. It's not about the quality of the argument, because people aren't rational, remember? They only care what they focus on. So by making people focus on this area, which was, in the short run, terribly damaging to Trump, and people went and parked their vote elsewhere so they wouldn't have to answer the question, who you're voting for. But a lot of that was just self-image preservation, right? People didn't really care what he did or didn't do to women, because people are selfish. If he did or did not do something to them personally, they care less. Sure, they care. They care that he's acting inappropriately. They care that he uses inappropriate language. They care that he insults people. But it's not a fear. They're not afraid they're going to come to your house and grab your pussy and try to kiss you without permission. Nobody's afraid of that. So it had the weird, perverse effect of humanizing Trump. He went from this big, scary monster that Clinton had framed to basically a seventh grade boy who was talking about girls in the worst possible ways. So it took the fear off him. Nobody saw that coming. And after it sunk in for a little while, there's part of you that realized, I think this process was happening in everybody's head, people started realizing that they always knew this about Trump. From the first day that Trump announced, every person in the United States said to themselves at some point, maybe consciously or at least subconsciously, they said to themselves, there's something in that guy's personal life that would deeply offend me. Now, the thing that offends me might be completely different than the thing that offends you. But let's face it, Trump's been around for a long time, and chances are he's done something in his private life that would offend every one of us. It would just be different things. So you already knew he was doing horribly terrible things in his personal life, that if you had to watch it or hear about it or just be exposed to it in any way, it would just make you run for the steam shower, and you'd want to get the Karen Silkwood treatment. Hearing it live on the Access Hollywood tape made it real. It made it visceral. We saw it. We heard it. So it rose in your priorities because it was just in your face. All right. There's no such thing as a steam shower, I guess. So during that time, Clinton's message went from look how scary Trump is to look what a inappropriate horn dog he is. That's not scary. And we kind of thought he was like that anyway. Even the people who supported him, nobody was really. We were surprised at the details, but we weren't surprised at the concept that he was doing stuff in his private life that would offend people. I think we all knew that, right? And then we've seen in this last week, and here's the big. I'm going to call this one of the biggest mistakes in political history. If I'm right, we'll know in a week, right? Here's the biggest mistake in political history. I think that Clinton's advisors and Clinton saw that the Access Hollywood tape took a huge bite out of Trump's polls. All right, people actually ran away saying, "I'm not voting for him. I'm not voting for him because of that pussy grabbing stuff. I don't want to be associated with that. I can't put my brand and his brand in the same sentence." All right, and so they said, "Hey, let's double down on this. This persuasion is working." And so you're seeing this week they've rolled down a bunch of ads, and Clinton has crafted her message all about Trump being mean to women because it worked, right? His poll numbers plunged as soon as the Access Hollywood tape came out. But here's what they missed. I think this is the big surprise that's coming. What they missed is that the people who abandoned him weren't really as real as they looked, meaning that people were parking their votes with Gary Johnson. They were saying they were undecided. They just didn't want to tell a pollster or anyone else that they still preferred him. You just can't say it. After that Access Hollywood tape, you can think you prefer Trump, but you can't say it. Can't say it out loud. You won't even say it to a pollster. And for a while, you're not going to say it. That was actually the time that I changed my endorsement from Trump to Gary Johnson under the philosophy that Gary Johnson only touches himself. So now a little time goes by, and the Access Hollywood tape becomes a little more normal in our minds, as normal as something like that can become, because it turns out, and this is a saying that my mother used to say, she used to say that you could get used to anything if you did it long enough. You could get used to hanging if you hung long enough. Well, you'd be dead, but you'd get used to it. So I think we're just sort of getting used to the appalling nature of what we heard about Trump's personal life. Whether you believed it or not, you were appalled, right? And it's not scary. He's not going to kiss us, personally. He's not going to grab our pussies, personally. But now, in the backdrop of all this, all these WikiLeaks and Project Veritas and the FBI announcements, they're all coming out. And they're painting a picture of Clinton that's a little scarier than you thought it was. Coffee. And here's the picture that all the leaks and announcements have painted for Clinton. She's had to be sobered up in the afternoon. She looked kind of drunk in public when she yelled, why aren't I not already 50 points ahead? She collapsed at 9/11. So you've got questions about her health that may be related to drinking. So she might have a health problem plus drinking, or it could be that drinking is the source of the health problem. But at this point, she doesn't look like the safest person to have her finger on the nuclear codes, does she? Because she might collapse that day, she might have a drink that day. That doesn't sound so safe, does it? And which candidate keeps talking about Putin? Which one is rattling the sabers? Which one wants a no-fly zone that could push us into World War III with Russia, a nuclear power? Who's that? And by the way, we keep finding out about the Clinton Foundation, and it turns out, as far as we can tell, they have been selling influence and at least access for money. And who are some of the people who pay for her Clinton speeches and Bill Clinton speeches and give money to the foundation? Hey, it's people who benefit by war. People who make bombs. People who make war instruments. Contractors. People who who could make money betting on war. So it turns out that Clinton is a scary mofo. She's the one who is the most interested in war because she's connected most deeply to people who profit financially from war. And she's connected to other countries that may have different interests than us, but they're giving a lot of money through her foundation. So suddenly she seems like a little bit scarier. So in this closing week, Clinton has changed her message to Trump is mean to women, which doesn't really scare anybody. And by the way, we had Bill Clinton in the White House, and Hillary suggests we should have him back in the White House as first husband. And if his behaviors don't offend people enough to rule out them as a team, because he is part of the team, right? Hillary actually sold him as part of her economic team. If that doesn't bother you, probably Trump's personal behavior won't bother you either. Doesn't bother you about Kennedy. He was kind of a horn dog too. All right. So Clinton has abandoned fear as her persuasion message in favor of, hey, this guy is mean to women, which doesn't really scare you. Even if you're a woman, it probably doesn't scare you too much. Meanwhile, all the leaks about Clinton make her seem scarier. So in that backdrop, in the final week, we see the polls starting to reverse. We see Trump pulling even or ahead in some polls, key states like North Carolina. And fear always beats other kinds of persuasions. So if nothing else changes, if this is all we have, then Trump wins in a landslide. By the way, along the lines of if nothing else changes, the latest O'Keefe tape showing a Democrat supporter operative saying things about black people that if you wanted to, you could imagine it was a little racist or insulting. I think I would actually defend the guy in saying that wasn't what he was saying. It's just the way he worded it in a private conversation sounded appalling. But probably the way he worded it to me doesn't make me think he's a racist. It makes me think he said something that people can take out of context pretty easily. So here's what I'm thinking. If Project Veritas didn't have anything better than that for this final week, there's a pretty good chance that the Clinton team doesn't have anything better than that. Because you want to give this sort of thing at least a week to sink in, and less than a week. So if you haven't seen anything from the Clinton side that's a bombshell, would they wait until Thursday, to do it? Would they wait until Friday to do it? I think they would not. I think they'd want to get a big chunk of that going at the end of this week, meaning today, probably. And really, that would have already happened, I think. So, I think what we have is what we're going to get. Could be surprised. This would be if I were to say any prediction I've ever made is less likely to come true, it's the prediction that not much will change between now and the actual election, just because the good stuff would have come out by now, because that would have been the better timing. Did I see Peasnick? Who was that? The guy on the O'Keefe tape? Soft coup video. Oh, the soft coup video. That's a big nothing. I mean, the parts I watched of it, it looked like he was just sort of a word thinking and calling what we already know to be happening a coup. That Clinton has lots of connections with lots of important people, and you could argue that's a coup. It just doesn't change how we think about it. Luntz said there would be another scandal. How would he know? Yeah, that nothing burger phrase is getting kind of annoying. You think Lentz got trolled by 4chan to think that there's something coming? So have you also noticed that the number of hoaxes floating around just went through the roof? And most of the hoaxes purport to be pro-Trump, which makes me think that they may be anti-Trump messages. They're just trying to get Trumpers to pass things around that would embarrass them for being so ridiculously bad. I think Hannity fell for one. I saw the one that said that President Clinton and the one that said that President Obama and Michelle had both dropped any Clinton messages from their Twitter feeds. And I read that. I just thought, okay, that's not true. So it's just watch out for anything. Anything you see in the next few days is going to look like a hoax. I saw on Twitter, but not on the news itself, that there was a church fire. An arsonist set a black church on fire and wrote some pro-Trump graffiti on it. If you were ever to look for something that was likely to be a false flag, that was likely to be done by Clinton's side, I gotta say that's it. Because imagine you're actually a Trump supporter. What's the last thing you would do if you could, let's say you had enough education that you could write the graffiti, go President Trump. Let's say you could spell. So you're smart enough that you could set a fire, you could navigate, you could find a black church, you could figure out how to start a fire, and you could write a sentence in English and graffiti on it. If you were smart enough to do those three things, probably you were smart enough to know that that would not help Donald Trump. I mean, you'd have to be really dumb to think that burning a black church in the final week of an election is going to help your guy. But could a Clinton supporter do that because they were racist to begin with and because they wanted to frame Trump? Yeah, that kind of makes sense. So if I had to bet on it, and I know I've said often that, betting on stupidity is the better play. But it's the timing of it that makes me think it's not stupidity, right? If this had happened over the summer, I'd say, just some idiot burning a church and thinking somehow that's going to help. But in the final week of the election, that's a big coincidence. It's a big coincidence that somebody got so stupid right in that final week. So if I had to bet, I'd say that's an example of Clinton's bullies setting a black church on fire. I mean, if I had to put money on it, I would definitely bet that was a Clinton supporter who lit that church on fire. And by the way, I'm not defending any Trump racists. There are definitely racists in the Trump side. I don't know if there are more racists on Trump's side than the other side. I think it's how you measure it and who's speaking out and what kind of racism you're talking about and all that. So I'm not hiding any warts. I'm not defending anybody. I'm not excusing anybody. I'm just saying that if you were to look at it objectively and say, what are the odds that a Trump supporter burned a black church in the final week before election and thought that would help? Zero. All right? Zero. What are the chances that a Clinton operative, a really bad actor, would do that because they feel it all slipping away and they need to change the focus on something dangerous because this whole woman message was completely failing? Now, I think the odds of that Clinton ordered it to happen are very low. I mean, you would, even if you had this idea and you brought it, you wouldn't even bring this idea to someone running for president. You wouldn't do it because you would be kicked out, right? Because they can't even have that conversation. But would a Clinton supporter think, hey, this could be helpful? And by the way, if they think they're racist anyway, well, burn down the black church. And anyway, so I think that probably won't move the needle because people are going to assume it was Clinton as much as they assume it was Trump supporters. Keep me away from government. I'd be too powerful. Did Michelle unfollow? No, I'm sure that's I'm not even going to look into that because I'm pretty sure that that's a hoax. Last week has blown up your mind about perceptions of reality. Yeah, there's more coming. Yeah, I already talked about the Steve Pizek thing. I think that's a nothing. If there were a tape showing Trump being racist, and there were any chance that that was going to come out today, or I think it would have come out. Right? There's no reason people would wait for the last few days because you want to put it out and you want to make sure everybody's heard it. Because the problem is if something comes out like the day before Election Day, 2/3 of voters just aren't even going to hear it because most people don't watch television. Most people don't follow the news. So you kind of need to give time for that stuff to percolate. Here's another question for you. If you had access to a tape that would embarrass Donald Trump and keep him from being president, how much would that tape be worth to Donald Trump? Let me say that again, because you're going to answer your own question. If you had in your possession, let's say you're a citizen, and for whatever reason you had in your possession, and you're the only one who has it, a tape that would disqualify Donald Trump from the presidency, how much do you think you could sell that tape to Donald Trump? 20 million? Probably. Who would care so much about the election that they would give up $20 million for themselves? So here's the thing. If there were a tape that bad, I think you would have seen it by now to give it time to work itself into the consciousness of the public. But if somebody had that tape and Trump knew about it, odds are you're not going to see that tape because there is some price that makes a tape like that go away. Yeah, only an idiot would try to blackmail Trump. And by the way, whoever had that tape, their career would be over if they let it out, right? That's it. They'd never work again. Geraldo has a tape. Did he say that? Talk about 4chan. What about it? What is there to talk about 4chan? Right. FBI Vault. Do you think the FBI is trying to dupe us? Well, we'll see. I wonder if we'll ever know everything that the FBI knows. The role of memes in the election. Well, I don't think memes have done much to move the needle. If you're talking about the clever little pictures that people are tweeting around social media, I don't think that they're moving the needle that much. They're good communication. So I guess given that both sides are doing it, it's sort of a tie. By the way, somebody said something on Twitter, and I can't give them credit because I forgot who it was, that I thought was interesting. It's not persuasive, but it's interesting. So Trump's call to drain the swamp has been great. I think it's a great phrase. People like it. It's descriptive. It's visual. You can smell it and feel it. So it's really good. But here's the weird coincidence. It turns out, and you can fact check me on this too, that Washington, D.C. is actually built what used to be a swamp until they drained it. So our government actually is in a drained swamp. So I thought that was just a funny coincidence. Oh, you saw that on John Adams? Oh, was that on the HBO miniseries? That was really good, by the way. If you haven't seen the HBO, I think it was HBO miniseries John Adams, that was really good. I think nobody's made that Epstein connection stick. Hillary looks drunk yesterday. Yeah, so I tweeted that there was a speech that Hillary was giving in which her tone and demeanor suggested either she was channeling Adolf Hitler or she had a couple of drinks before she went on stage. Now, obviously I have no way to know that's true, but it was my impression, and impressions matter. Cyber attacks to cancel the election. New York Times is already moving away from Clinton. Yeah, so as I predicted, the mainstream media and the pollsters who seem to have been as crooked as Hillary all need to save themselves at this point. So everything was fine as long as it looked like Clinton was going to win. You could be the pro-Clinton mainstream media, and then she wins, and that's great because you have access, because you need access to the president to make news. So as long as you were betting on the winning horse, keep on going. But at this point, it looks like she may not be the winning horse, if you know what I mean. Plus that Donna Brazile thing, it just made the mainstream media look terribly embarrassed. So I think you're going to see some blowback. You're going to see some people saving their own asses by disassociating themselves with her success or lack of it. And you might see, I think you're going to see some angry pushback because of the Donna Brazile thing. That just made all journalists look crooked, frankly. And even though, as I said before, I don't think CNN in particular was necessarily even involved in any of the Donna Brazile cheating. However she got that information, we don't know. But there are at least two sources where she could have gotten it that was not CNN. And if it was CNN, it was one person. So that doesn't indict the whole company. What do you think about Peter Kedzik? Remind me which one he is. Oh, he was the one with the video. I forget which one is the one on Project Veritas and which one is the conspiracy coup video. Neither of them are important. They don't have any effect on this election. Trump running unopposed. There have been periods when that seemed to be the case. Periods when Clinton just went underground and she wasn't saying much and doing much, and he was out there every day. So we've never seen that before. So while you could argue whether that doesn't meet the standard of running unopposed, I think if Trump wins in a landslide, which I'm predicting now, I've been predicting it since the beginning, but there were periods this summer when I said if nothing changed, it wouldn't happen. But I also said things would change, and they did. So at this point, it looks like a Trump landslide, and I completely forget what my point was, but I'm sure I had one. I'm not going to define what is a landslide. Landslide is sort of like art. You know it when you see it. And by that I mean if he didn't have a landslide in the in the general election, but he did win the electoral votes in a landslide. People would call that a landslide. If he just wins substantially, it's going to look like a landslide. And by the way, I think that he's only really one or two states you didn't see coming away from a landslide, isn't he? Aren't we down to it's sort of a, I've been trying not to become the electoral map guy. I'm trying to ignore all that, and I was just sort of looking at the popular mood in general and where the top line is. Let the electoral map take care of itself. Oh, the guy who leaked the DOJ stuff to Podesta. I don't think there's anything important there. Because once again, I read the leak where where Podesta got an email giving him a heads up about some Hillary-related, was it FBI or Department of Justice stuff? Department of Justice. But the things he gave him a heads up were kind of inert. It was just heads up, we're talking about this. Heads up, there's a meeting about this. I don't know. It seems like a nothing to me. Vince Foster, unless there's something new about that, that's a nothing. 90% of bets are for Trump. What's that mean? Oh, had dinner with Podesta. Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't think that people are terribly affected by who knows who had lunch with who, and even to some extent who had access and who bought access and stuff like that. Unless the people buying access are truly bad actors who could destroy the world. I think everybody assumes that somebody like Podesta is connected to sort of everyone, and every time he goes out to dinner, there's probably somebody at the table who, might be problematic someday. So they're all connected. I don't know if that feels like new enough news to people. I think everybody just assumes, somebody like Clinton and Podesta are just connected to everybody, good and bad. Is Clinton going back to the Putin story? Could Trump cause an upset in New York or California on Election Day? I doubt it. No, Project Veritas thing won't have much impact. He's not close in either one of those places, is he? So on election night, I will be live streaming for some of it, probably not all of it. And I will also be on the BBC. So the BBC combines its radio channels for election night to get maximum coverage. So I will be talking to about 100 million people that day. I don't know how long I'll be on. It might be just on for a couple of quotes, might be longer. I think they can sort of play it by ear that day. With Christina, probably. We'll see what everybody's doing that day. I think Christina doesn't like being on there with me as much as I like having her on there with me, because she gets a little bored just sitting there watching comments go by. Lucky guy. I am the luckiest guy in the world some days. No, she hasn't dumped me yet. Can you believe it? Scallops the BBC. How do you land such a young hottie? Well, keep in mind that there... have you ever heard of, let's see, there's a word for it, sapiosexual. Have you ever heard the word sapiosexual? Let's see how well informed you are. Sapiosexual. Yes, so one of you has. So one of you already knows where I'm going with this. I'll tell you in a minute. I just want to see how many people have ever heard the word a sapiosexual. Yeah. So I'll tell you for those of you who don't know what a sapiosexual is. It's someone who's turned on by another person's intelligence. So I can tell you that in my life, so this is just my life history, if you can imagine, I mean, you see what I look like, and that's no prize. I'm 5'8", and for most of my life, I didn't have much going on for me. But I've always been unusually smart. And over my life, I've noticed that while 95% of women couldn't care less about me because, I'm not the tall, muscular guy that looks like a lumberjack, 5% of women, no matter what they look like, no matter how valuable, they are, or valuable, no matter how attractive they are, about 5% of women are really turned on by smart guys. And Christina, being a Berkeley graduate, a woman of many talents, is one of those people. We like each other because we're smart. So we get along great, actually. I don't have a new book in the works. My publisher has been asking for one, as you might imagine. Yeah, Christina plays violin and piano. Glenn Beck endorsed Trump? Did that just happen? That's interesting. Yeah, Marilyn Monroe and some of her men were smart men. Your girlfriend convinced herself that you're not voting Trump. That's funny. Mark Cuban. I think Mark Cuban's in a tough situation because he backed a horse that looked safe, but it turns out his horse has a limp. So Cuban's on a limping horse, if you know what I mean. I wouldn't say that Cuban is a sellout. I think he did what made sense for his brand and for his future influence in the country. I'd like to think that Mark Cuban is going to turn out to be, one of the more important assets for the United States. I think he's just getting started. I think he's got a lot ahead of him. We haven't seen enough of him to make a judgment, but he's got the chops. He's got the ability to influence the public, to speak in public. He's smart enough. He's got the money. He could make a big difference. I just hope he finds a way to channel that into something productive. Yeah, he's arrogant. He's narcissistic. Every leader is. Come on. Do we really care that our leaders are narcissistic and have big egos? How the hell do you get to become the leader of the country without having those two things working in your favor? What about Peter Thiel? I love Peter Thiel. I'm a big fan of his. I met him briefly, and he's as smart as you think he is. He's probably even smarter than that. And you probably already thought he was smart. So he's crazy smart. Elon Musk. Yeah. Why would you care what I think of Elon Musk? Clearly, I think Elon Musk is approaching national treasure status. I mean, the things he's doing are not just good for the economy, not just good for technology. The things that Elon Musk does change what you think of your country and think of the future and think of possibilities. I mean, even if some of the stuff he's doing doesn't work out, man, does he make you dream big. Man, does he make you think that America is the place you want to go if you really want to make a difference. Man, does Elon Musk make you think that, we can go to the moon if we want to and, put up a colony there and, have free electricity from the sun and all those things. So in terms of inspiring us, Elon Musk is a freaking superstar. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. But, like any strong leader, if you dig down and talk to his employees, they're going to have their stories about how he was a narcissistic bully with a big ego. And, it's all the same story. You find a guy like that or a woman like that. Anybody who's had that kind of success and has changed that many things and done so many things that other people didn't think was possible, yeah, there's some bullying. There's some bullying in that story. So just expect to find that. But, the big question everybody asks is not whether he is or is not a bully. The question is, whose side is he on? Right? The reason that most of us don't care that Steve Jobs was a huge bully is that he was on our side. He was making stuff we wanted. He was helping the economy. He was helping America be a technology leader. He was changing civilization in ways that we wanted him to change it. So yeah, he was a bully, but he was our bully. He was totally on our side. Is there any time that you thought Steve Jobs wasn't really on your side? Not really. Same with Elon Musk. He's a badass when it comes to business. He's got a lot going on. All right, so he's obviously, being a bully to somebody, somewhere, probably often. But whose side is he on? He's on our side. He's building stuff for the United States. He's making life better. He's making products we want. We like our driving around in our Teslas. So we forgive it. Likewise, potential President Trump is a bully. No doubt about it. He has bullied people right in front of our eyes. He is a bully. But whose side is he on? He says he's on the side of America. He said that from the beginning. I find that credible. I find it consistent and believable that he's on America's side. He wasn't always fighting for America. Sometimes he was fighting to lower his taxes. Sometimes he was fighting against a lawsuit. Sometimes he was fighting against, his personal enemies, whatever. But at the moment, the offer he's making to America is, hey, it's time for a bully. You have big problems, big enemies, big obstacles. They're not going to fall over on their own. Brick walls don't fall over on their own. Somebody's got to take a sledgehammer to them. Who do you trust with your sledgehammer against the wall, the bully or the one who got pushed over by the bully? Sometimes you need a bully, right? So it matters if the bully's on your side. That's what matters. And as far as I can tell, he's on the side of America. Team Clinton has done a good job of creating this imaginary notion where because he's on America's side against people coming in, that maybe he's against the people inside America too, even though he's never said anything remotely interpretable that way, all right? Interpretable is not really a word, or is it? Interpretable? Let's say it's a word for now. So, yeah, I think the bully theme, worked for a little while because it's, as soon as you hear it, you think to yourself, bully? I don't want one of those. But after it sinks in that our biggest problems are going to require a bully to make any change whatsoever, the big question is whether the bully's on your side. Is he a Steve Jobs bully, doing stuff you want? Is he an Elon Musk bully, allegedly? I have no idea if Elon Musk is a bully. I just assume everybody that successful has a little bully in them. As long as our bullies are on our side. In high school, the biggest bully in my class, I used to help him with his homework. We were friends, so I actually liked him. But I didn't get bullied. because he was on my side. He was the coolest bully ever. In fact, if anybody had ever come after me with thoughts of violence on their side, the bully, the biggest bully in my class, would have beat the crap out of him because he needed me to do his homework. All right? So it depends whose side the bully's on. Do you have bully in you? Probably not. And that's why I'm not already a billionaire. In fact, I would say my biggest weakness as a business person is that I don't have that. I'm generally not willing to do things where if I win, someone else loses. I'm uncomfortable in that situation usually. I prefer to be in situations where if I win, everybody wins. So if I draw a comic and I get paid for it, I win. And if you read that comic and laugh at it, you win too. Why can't we both win? So I like living in a world where we both win, but it severely restricts my income my income potential because there are plenty of situations where I could have just bowled over people and forced things to happen and embarrass people into doing what I want. I have those skills. There's nothing that would, talent-wise, there's nothing that would prevent me from being one of the best bullies ever. If I wanted to do it, I'm pretty sure I could do it well because I'm not afraid of people, and I'm good with words, and I can be as dangerous as I need to be. I just don't want to be. I don't have that reason. It's not in me as a personality trait. Yeah, I'm more about either attacking the bullies themselves or co-opting the bullies to be on my side. And that's sort of how I see Trump. And let me say, by the way, this is a topic I haven't written about. I don't know if I will, but let me try it out here. It's my impression, and I can't support this with data or science, right? So this is just an impression, that one of the things you get with the less experienced politician, one of the things you would get with a President Trump, is more opportunity for the citizens to be a bigger part of the country's future. Meaning that I think he would be more open to citizen involvement in the process, citizen ideas, more open to testing something on a small scale that citizens brought forward. And the reason is that the thing he's bringing to the process is he's not owned by the money interests. So what would interest a President Trump is your idea good? And might it work? And can I test it in a small way? All right, so that's sort of the businessman's approach, business person's approach. Let me make that less sexist. So the business person's approach is what Trump has. He's not influenced by other people buying his time or his talents, we hope. But he would be influenced by a good idea. Because doesn't he want to do a good job? Why wouldn't he want a good idea? And especially if it's a new idea. That would probably mean even more to somebody who's a business person who hasn't been influenced by, all these connections to everybody. Now imagine a President Clinton. She's got all these favors she owes people and all the favors she will owe people in the future. All this interconnected web of favors makes it sort of impossible to listen to ordinary citizens. Because suppose you had a really good idea and you brought it to a President Clinton and said, here's my good idea. I think we should test this. You know what she's going to say? Well, let's say it's an idea for reducing prison populations, whatever that is. So you're going to reduce crime, so you're going to reduce prison populations. President Clinton says, do you know how much money I got from the private prison building industry? Maybe put that one on the back burner. Take that same idea to a President Trump and say, look, prisons are expensive. I've found a way to have fewer of them. President Trump says, I have no reason not to consider that idea. I have no competing interest to that. Fewer people in prison is probably a good idea as long as they're not criminals walking the street. So show me your new idea. And if it's good, maybe I'll suggest we try that on a small scale, because why not? I don't owe anybody any favors. If the idea is good, I want to get my face on Mount Rushmore, right? It's not going to happen from bad ideas. It's going to happen from good ideas. So if you got a good idea, President Trump probably going to listen to you. Why? Because it's in his best interest, and he has no reason not to listen to a good idea. Probably his whole life is people bringing him ideas about where to build the next Trump building, what it should look like, a good idea of what the theme of this building should be versus the other one, a good idea for where a golf course could be, an idea about what he should do, writing a book or whatever. I promise you, all these ideas are not coming from Trump's own head. These are coming from people who, over his lifetime, have come to him and said, I have a good idea for what you should do. Here it is. And then he looks at it and says, that's a good idea. I'll do that one. So for those who think, Trump can't listen to advice and he's stuck in his ways and he can't learn, that's all nonsense. All right? Everything in his past suggests exactly the opposite. He's literally an entrepreneur, all right? A lifetime entrepreneur. All you do is listen to good ideas. All you do is learn. It's all you do. So he's learning and listening to new ideas all the time. It would be ridiculous to imagine that he's going to turn that off just because he's president. All right? His reflex is, show me the good idea. What can you do to help me? Let me evaluate it. See how that works. All right? Clinton's instinct is, who paid me? Who do I owe a favor to? How will that affect, my relationship with Clinton Foundation, Saudi Arabia, Bill's legacy, God knows what, all right? So if you elect Clinton, you're electing someone who has so many favors she owes that it will be hard for her to even consider a new idea, no matter how good it is. But Trump, if you got a new idea, citizen, step up. Let me say something else today. Again, I probably won't tweet, or maybe I'll tweet it. But remember when both candidates were picking vice presidents, and everybody's second guessing, right? Everybody's saying Keane and Pence are good or bad based on what they predict will happen between the time that they're selected and Election Day. So mostly people were talking about it in terms of the election, right? Which vice president will help the candidate get elected. So Clinton picked Keane and Trump picked Pence. And then all this second guessing began, and the prognosticator said, who did a good job, who did a good job, who did a good job? Well, guess what? Question's been answered, right? Can anybody say with a straight face that there's any question that Pence was the better choice? Because really the only thing that Pence had to do was look like the adult in the room. Check. He does that really well. Look smart. Check. He talks really well. I think Pence does better on camera and live than anyone else running right now, including Trump. Trump is more interesting, so you could argue that persuasively he's the far better choice. But he's also a little unsafe, right? And not everybody reads Trump the same way. You don't all read Trump as smart. Some people do, some people don't. But Pence, when he's talking, you don't think anything except, he's pretty smart. He knows what he's talking about. He seems experienced. You have mostly all good thoughts. Even if you hate all of his policies, you still think Pence looks like a pretty good guy. So Pence won the only thing he needed to do, which is the one vice presidential debate. He won that, all right? So he didn't act crazy. He acted smart. He acted capable. He totally looks like he could take over tomorrow. Does anybody think, we're in trouble if Pence takes over? No. No, that sale was made. So I think let's conclude. Let's make a decision. There's only a few days left until Election Day. I think it's exceedingly unlikely that either Keane or Pence themselves will do anything that changes the result at this point. So let's call it. let's call it like it is. The most important hiring decision that either the candidates had to make, Trump or Clinton. And remember, that's one of the biggest decisions we have to come to as voters. Which one of them has better advisors, and which one of them hires better? All right. Clinton hired Kaine. Trump hired Pence. Who's better? Pence. Trump is a better hirer on the most important question. Now let's look at their campaigns. You saw Trump firing Lewandowski when he needed to. Not much, there wasn't a lot of delay there. I mean, when it was time, when he got into the scrappy fighting phase of the primary and he needed more adult supervision to get through the primary, he fired his friend, somebody he had a long relationship to, he was loyal to, but it was time. And sometimes firing is more important than hiring, because if you have somebody who's not doing it or doesn't fit the new situation, you got to have the guts to fire him. So Trump did. Hired Manafort, who did a great job getting them through the convention. And then Manafort wasn't the right choice anymore after the convention. So he fired him. Again, if you're looking at who hires well, don't forget who fires well, because firing is the harder part. Then he got Steve Bannon and he got Kellyanne Conway. Universal praise for Kellyanne. All right? Even the opponents say she's a good choice, and we see that she has been a good choice. All right. So who did the best hiring? Well, Podesta's doing a pretty good job, but he's got some WikiLeaks problems now. I don't think anybody saw that coming. So I'd say Clinton did a good job hiring her campaign staff, but so did Trump. And if you were to compare them, I would say I'd give a little bit advantage to Kellyanne over Podesta. She seems like she's got a little bit more on the ball. That's just subjective. I think maybe she has a little more of the persuader gene in her than Podesta, who's a little bit more of a lawyer. All right. So I would say in that case, Trump did better. Now, Trump also hired Steve Bannon, which I think a lot of people on both sides, no matter what side you're on, a lot of people are saying, eyebrow goes up. It's like, is that a good idea? So when it first happened, I have to admit, I had the same reaction a lot of people had, which is, that's kind of a polarizing choice. He's got some baggage of his own. Breitbart, I don't know about that. But what do they do? When was the last time you saw Steve Bannon talking in public? All right? He just sort of ran things behind the scenes, and apparently he does it really well because the results are good. So whatever's happening behind the scenes, Bannon's obviously a key part of it, and he must be doing something well because you don't see him, but things are starting to work out for Trump, right? And anyway, so I would say if you're wondering who can hire people and do a better job, if you add up the vice presidents and even the changes that you've seen in the campaign staff, advantage Trump, right? Even if you don't like his policies, if you were to look at it objectively, he hired better when it mattered, right? And it wasn't just one person. It wasn't just the VP. Look at the changes he made in his campaign staff. That's some good hiring there. What about the ground game accusations that Trump doesn't have a ground game? Well, he's running tie without a ground game. I mean, if you're looking for the president who can think out of the box and still get results, look at the guy who thought out of the box and got results. Trump's instincts are better than Hillary, certainly as a persuader, for sure. I don't think anyone will end up in jail. They go lower, we go higher. That's pretty clever. social media is Trump's ground game. Yeah, I think that's a fair statement. We should mean peace on November 8th. All right, peeps. If you want to win this election and you're a Trump supporter and you want to win, you also want him to do well because he will be representing you, not just the country. He's going to represent the people who elected him a little bit more than the rest of the country, right? You need to take that part of your duty seriously as a citizen. And you need to do everything you can on November 8th to keep the peace. If somebody provokes you, walk away. You don't want to. You're going to be pissed. You're going to want to pull out your concealed weapon. You're going to want to, punch some people. You're going to want to do that because the angry Clinton losers, which I'm predicting there will be a lot of them, are going to want to provoke. They're going to go on the streets. They're going to cause trouble. They're going to do a lot of bad stuff to make their point that choosing Trump was a bad thing. You need to go opposite. If you want to win, persuasion-wise, you counter them with peace. All right? You counter them by walking away. You counter them by not wearing your Trump hat on Election Day. You counter them by not putting on your Trump T-shirt and walking around where people are going to want to punch you. Go underground. Go peaceful. Be useful. Just be useful. Just remember that. Keep that one thing in mind on Election Day. What is useful? All right? You're going to want to punch somebody on Election Day. Does that help you? Who's that help? Does that help your candidate? Does that help you in the long run? Not at all. True story. A few days ago, I went to lunch with a Trump supporter who was wearing a Trump T-shirt. I asked him to change his T-shirt before going to lunch because it's just not safe. I wouldn't go to a restaurant in a Trump T-shirt. God knows what's going to end up in your food. And so I asked him to change his Trump T-shirt, and he did. And his other T-shirt that he had with him said literally Hitler on it. Now, it's making fun of all the people who are making bad analogies and saying, literally Hitler. But he actually took off his Trump shirt and put on one that had Hitler on it, even though it was a joke about Hitler, not supportive Hitler. And I had no problem going to dinner with that. Hitler shirt? No problem, because it was in the context of a joke anyway. Trump shirt? Probably would have got me killed. Will Trump want a second term? I don't think he'll know, and I don't think we'll know until we get close to a second term. Yeah, I talked about Hillary screeching at the Trump protester. My take on it is that she sounded drunk. That doesn't mean she was, but she sounded drunk, and I wouldn't put it past her. He only had 2 shirts with him. Do you think Weiner flipped for the feds? I don't know. Does he have anything to flip? I suppose it depends if he knows anything that they don't already know. Side effect of anti-seizure drugs? Does it make you angry? Obama has turned on Comey. Yeah. Comey's interesting. Someday we'll find out if he was a hero or not. I say hero. I say Comey warned the public twice at great personal risk to his reputation and at great risk to his own reputation, right? I say the first time that Comey didn't decide to pursue the case against Clinton, he also warned us by reading out all the things she was accused of and that they knew were true. And he let the country decide. But when things got worse, and by the way, people are, I heard the argument, I'm going to take a little detour, and then we're going to go back to this because it's related. Have you noticed that after the latest scandals came out and the FBI announced the email stuff, that the usual pundits who were supporting Clinton, there weren't as many of them, and that they were kind of getting the B team of pundits? Did anybody notice that? If you're watching on CNN, let's see if you noticed that too. Did you notice that the pundits that came on to support Clinton when things were the worst were not really the A team? Now, they did bring out crazy James Carville, who unfortunately just, I think, made things worse because he just looked unhinged. It's not that different than how he usually acts, but in this context, he looked a little unhinged. And in the context of the Project Veritas stuff with the dirty tricks, when you bring on, somebody like Carville, acting like a rabid dog, it's probably not your best messaging. But here's my favorite. They brought Alan Dershowitz out to talk about Comey and announcing the emails and stuff. And let me talk about Alan Dershowitz. Now, Alan Dershowitz is on my short list of people I mention when somebody says, is there anybody who could change your mind? Is there anybody you really respect their opinion? And I almost always put him in my top three, Alan Dershowitz. Because, first of all, he's crazy smart. I mean, he's really smart. Second of all, he's always been a pretty straight shooter, that he'll tell you the legal truth, how the law sees it, even if it doesn't agree with his side. All right, he'll tell you his side. He'll put his spin on things. But when it comes to the law, my interpretation, and I could be wrong because I'm not a lawyer, but my interpretation is he usually plays it straight. This is the law. This is what the Constitution is. And then here's my opinion separate from that. And I've always respected that. So he was on trying to support his candidate, Hillary Clinton. And Dershowitz said, and this sounds right to me because Alan Dershowitz said it, and he's probably right about all this stuff. He said that what Comey should have done is he should have said, the Fourth Amendment prohibits me from reading these emails, so all I'm doing is making a technical announcement that we know emails exist. I want you to know that you should not assume anything bad is in those emails because nobody's read them. At least I haven't read them, Comey. So Dershowitz says that's what he should have done, because what he did was leave the impression that there was something bad in those emails, just by announcing them when he did, so close to the election. And given that that's a break in pattern, it's a break in precedent. So normally you would not announce this sort of thing this close to an election unless you had something that you were prosecuting on right away or something. So it's unusual, thought Dershowitz, and a mistake, Dershowitz said, because what he should have said is we haven't read the email, so we don't know what's in it. So here's my interpretation of that. And by the way, this is Alan Dershowitz. You can't get a better defense, literally. You can't buy, no matter how much money you had, you couldn't buy a better defender, no matter what your problem was, than Alan Dershowitz. And the best he could come up with this FBI email stuff is that Comey should have said, we haven't read them. Do you know why I think Comey didn't do such an obviously correct and appropriate thing? Is it because Dershowitz is smarter than Comey, and he thought of this idea of just saying, just announcing, we haven't read them, but you should know they're there? If Dershowitz could think of that idea, do you think that Comey, who was a prosecutor and also has access to the best attorneys in all of the land, do you think he didn't think of that option? Did you think that Comey didn't think of the option of just talking to someone privately in Congress so he could be in the clear, having alerted Congress, but still let the election take its own course? Do you think Comey didn't think about that? Do you think it just didn't occur to him? And that Alan Dershowitz thought about it, but he didn't. Maybe. I mean, maybe, possibly. But what's the better explanation? The better explanation is that somebody read those emails, and there's something really bad in there. Now, it could be true that Comey himself has not read the emails, or certainly has not read enough of the emails that he could form a complete view that he's confident in. Right? That might be true. And it might be, and I think there's a good chance that Comey himself did not personally read any emails. That could be true. But it's also true that we don't live in a fantasy world. Perhaps we live in the real world. Perhaps the individual, and that may have been somebody in, I don't know, New York City police force or whoever was investigating the Weiner case, it may be that that person saw these emails and said, well, I do have a warrant to look in this machine. This stuff is on the machine. I'm going to look at this stuff. Do you believe that nobody in the world who had access to Weiner's emails, and you have to assume there were a lot of them, initially probably one person, but eventually a few of them, do you think that none of them read them, even some of them, or enough of them to find out there was a problem? Do you think that seems even a little bit likely? So if you look at Dershowitz's defense, he was saying, gee, you should have said you didn't read them. But you know why Comey couldn't say that? Because Comey, according to everyone on both sides of the aisle and through his entire history, has one characteristic that everyone agrees on: integrity. If he said they didn't read them, he would have been lying. Now, it may be possible that he didn't read them, but somebody read them. And somebody knows that they have a problem in them or not. All right? They may not have read all of them, but somebody's reading the frickin' emails. All right? We live in the real world. Do you know how hard it is to look at an email? Watch me do it now. Nobody's looking. I'm looking at an email. I'm done. Did I get caught? No. Somebody looked at the emails. Probably more than somebody. Probably a lot of people looked at the emails. And guess what? At least one of those people probably said to a superior, I'm not going to tell you what's in the email because I don't want you to know. I want you to be able to say you haven't seen the email. But please, don't let people vote without knowing we're looking at this stuff. That's all I'm going to say. I looked at the emails. I'm not going to tell you what's in there, James Comey or James Comey's subordinate or James Comey's, associates. I'm not going to tell you. I'm just, the grunt whose job it was to look at these emails. I'm not telling you any details, but good Lord, you got to tell the public that we have these things. So, if the best defense that Clinton had from the best defender maybe in the whole world, Alan Dershowitz, I mean literally, maybe the best in the world, if all he could come up with is that, gee, they shouldn't have read these emails and they should have said that, I got a problem with what's in those emails. What do I think is in them? It could be anything. Yeah, I think guessing what problem is in the emails would be a lost cause. An auto-generated summary is still metadata. Oh, isn't that interesting? Suppose they did a search on the emails without reading them individually, and they searched for keywords. Let's say they searched for, give me an example. Throw me out a keyword. I don't know, keywords would have been tough. Yeah, I don't know if you could get metadata that would scare you about the emails. Drone, Benghazi, email forensics, Roswell, Lolita. Lolita. Yeah. Now, almost any of those, bird dogging, maybe. Ransom, Pepe. Now, the trouble is that she could be saying something positive or negative about any of those things. So she could be just saying, hey, there's a rumor about this, and it wouldn't mean anything. So no, I don't think you could get there just by doing a metadata analysis. But suppose you put it through Watson. Oh, here's a question. So IBM's computer, Watson, it's about as close as we have to artificial intelligence. Let me just throw this out here, just because it's fun. I don't think this happened, but just it's fun to talk about. Suppose the FBI had access to Watson, and they went and said, look, we can't have a human read these emails, but we also can't not know what's in there because there's an election coming up, and if there's something in there bad, we kind of need to know. So can we run this code through Watson and have Watson decide if we should tell the public? Now, Watson wouldn't necessarily put it in those words because it's not programmed to speak in those terms, I assume. But could Watson look at language choice? Could it look at topics in the news? Could it look at polls? Could it pull from other big data in the world? And could it determine, just based on the content of the emails, that it would be problematic for Clinton's election? I'll bet it could. Now, it would have to be written for that purpose, but who knows what kind of programs exist for Watson. So, for example, let's say there's a program that Watson has to search for terrorists. And all it does is search telephones and email messages looking for something problematic. Maybe it's, suppose it's a program that just looks for deception. It looks for lying. How about that? Watson could figure out which topics are important, let's say Benghazi and bird dogging and whatever else. So it could find keywords of things that are important. And then it could probably also search for signs of deception and, let's say, plans for deception. Yeah, think about it. It might be illegal for a human to read those emails and announce it. But would it be illegal to run a program on it, like using a Watson supercomputer, and have the computer tell you that you should be worried or not worried? I don't think that happened, but we're pretty close to being able to do that, right? How does that change the law? When you can't look at something, but you can have your robot look at it and tell you how it was. We're really close to that. Your Mac could handle that. All right, I'm going to get off and do some real work now. Been great talking to you. Read my blog. Follow me on Twitter. I'm sure you already do. I'll talk to you guys later. Tweet me.